Moving on to item E, consideration discussion of the low bid of Chicagoland paving for house demolition, construction, municipal parking lot. I thought we'd already voted on all this. Am I missing something, Mr. Administrator?
Well, the issue is that we have, from previous discussion, maybe there's a bit of a conflict. Earlier discussion was to pursue this parking lot and get it built this season. We bid the project. It came in at $337,000. That was roughly about $137,000 above the estimate that was provided within the budget process, but yet still below the engineer's estimate. I don't know what happened; those numbers weren't reconciled. So the key issue in kind of reviewing this, we've also looked at the possibility of what might be considered value engineering or sometimes discount engineering, where if we try to eliminate some things, lighting, stormwater, a number of things, to see if we could reduce the price of that. The concern with that is these are lighting standards, drainage standards, things like that. Those are the standards of the city. If we require a variance, generally in zoning law, variance does not hold up to economic hardship, meaning that, you know, if you want to save $20,000 doesn't stand as a justification for reducing parking or drainage or things like that. So while we looked at that, there's probably maybe a little bit of money that possibly could be saved, but we also are very sensitive to the neighbors, screening, fencing, landscaping, and so forth. So we also considered, basically there are three options. One, as I mentioned, to go forward with the parking lot to get it done before Thanksgiving. We'd be on schedule for that. The question is what money is available for that. We did have a surplus from last year, from last year's revenues and expense matters, so money is available for that to meet $137,000. It's not restricted, it's not funding other projects, for example, police, public works, or has been earmarked for other things. As I mentioned, there is also a possibility of reducing some of the things from that, but again, the concerns about the variance from our standards and also the impact on the neighborhood. And then the third option is also for consideration. If we went out to bid, perhaps at what might be considered a more competitive time, winter, January, February, bidding is a bit like throwing a dart at a moving target. It kind of depends what the market is. Even in this case, right now it's pretty good because asphalt prices are low because it's based on oil. So those are the types of considerations. I guess what I would ask for the consideration of the councils, depending on what the priority is, we can do this project or we can wait. If the priority is to get it done before November, money is available to do that. If the priority is to see if we could save money, then we might consider coming back to it with a bid in January, February. I would defer to Steve, is far more experienced than I do as far as targeting what might be the annual bidding time. So.
Can I make a couple of comments, Mr. Mayor?
Well, were we going to go to Steve or not? Isn't that what you just asked?
Yeah. Oh, he's available for it. Yes, sir.
I got it. All right, Alderman Williams.
I think I'm the one who kind of started this little storm, if you will, because we had budgeted $200,000 for this project. The bids came in at $337,000. Because of that, I asked the question, where are the additional funds coming from? I am not at all opposed to doing this project. I want to do the project. I think it's the right thing to do. I think that we just need to be told that we have the money, where that money's coming from. Once that money comes from there, we're not hurting any other project. In addition to that, I do not want to see us compromise the integrity of the project by putting in less asphalt, by not putting in a fence, by not putting in landscaping. I think those are all absurdities when it comes to doing the project as a city. I mean, we should be setting an example of how to do it and how to do it right, rather than trying to cut some corners and able to, in order to save a buck. I would rather not do the project if that's the case. So I suppose what I'd like to hear is, where are we getting the extra funds, and are we going to hurt any other projects by taking funds away from them?
All right, Stephanie, our CFO is here. She's going to answer that question.
Okay, one other question, or one other comment before I said it. The other is, this was originally hinged on a licensing agreement with Deli for You, renting, licensing, having access to that lot at a fee. And, we've been told that they're willing to do it, but I don't have anything in writing yet saying that there's a commitment. And I would say that I would be wholesale in favor of this once we find out what Stephanie has to say about where the money's coming from, and that we have a signed agreement with Deli for You.
Well, let's go back to the agreement portion.
Yeah, the license probably is the easy part. Alderman, we did actually have a letter from the owner of Deli for You indicating that he was willing to enter into any arrangement, and on several occasions indicated that he's willing to pay $1,000 a month. The license agreement is a relatively simple document. The mayor and I talked about it yesterday. It'll be ready for your next council meeting.
Great. Signed?
Since you're on that topic,
Good.
Mr. Mayor, since he's on the topic of that,
Yeah.
what is the term of that agreement? What's the length of time? Is it as long as he's attending the space?
Typically, they're cancelable at will in a situation like this, so that I would recommend that we do that so that we can cancel it at will. But we're flexible on that, Alderman, if you have something in mind.
CFO,
As Joe mentioned last, and as we talked about when we did the comparison to last year, we are $1 million ahead of our net income. So we have an extra $1 million that we were not anticipating based on savings that we had last year. So basically, we would take money from the unrestricted funds that we'd have in our account, and then when we do a budget amendment, we would add that amount to that line item when we do our budget amendment.
Okay, but we have a $4,869,000 obligation that comes due on December 15th. Is that going to take away from that, the available funds for that?
It depends on how, what you determine you need to do. Based on the current budget, we have $2 million in this year's budget to cover the portion of it. We also have $2.7 million in restricted funds. They're assigned to that, pay off that bond in our general fund. So that comes up to $4.7 million.
So our obligation outside of that would be about 100,000, some change.
So we technically have $1 million extra from this last fiscal year, plus we have another $1.6 million unrestricted. Our budget is $1.6 million negative. So technically, we would have $1 million that we would be able to carry over that would be unrestricted and not committed.
Unrestricted, so we would have enough money to cover the overage for the arena property and do the parking lot.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
okay. I would like to just go ahead with this thing. Can we get direction?
You can vote on it tonight, Mayor.
Vote on it, and it'll be dependent on the licensing agreement being ready to go.
That would come next
Are
meeting.
both of you in favor of that? I see you
Oh, yeah.
nodding to each other. You're okay with it?
Yeah, as long as it's based on that licensing agreement.
I'd like to make a motion then that
Yes.
we approve the contract for the work, subject to receiving an acceptable lease, or what's the term, Mike? Licensing agreement that's acceptable to the city attorney and the mayor.
Okay.
And we can move forward with that.
All right, I feel very good
I
about
second that.
And we have a second, and we need a roll call.
At that point, it doesn't need to come to another meeting, does it?
No, not the way the motion was stated.
Alderman Druin?
Aye.
Alderman Levinson?
Aye.
Alderman Williamson?
Oh, right out. You could,
Who's the call?
Alderman Williamson?
I'm waiting on an answer, hold on.
Oh,
May I, Mayor?
yes, go ahead.
No, the license agreement has to come back to the council, but I think what Alderman, if I understand it correct, is we would get a signed agreement from the Deli for You. We'll bring that to the council next time. Once we get that signed agreement,
So the only thing it's subject to is our approval, which
Right.
we better be able to guarantee that. Okay.
Okay, and you can tell us prior to the next meeting that
We get
It's been signed and
I
you're
would get it
good.
out to you by email right away, so
Okay.
you get a look at it.
Awesome.
Because we're gonna run out of season if we keep
Oh, I
doing
agree,
this.
I agree. No,
November
I'd love to see it
15th is
soon.
about the deadline for asphalt.
Okay, aye.
All right.
Alderman
Aye.
Rosenthal.
Aye, with great enthusiasm.
Alderman Musser. Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Where are we?